Hormones of the adrenal medulla. There are two similar hormones called catecholamines. These are epinephrine and norepinephrine, or noradrenaline and adrenaline. These hormones prepare the body to deal with short-term stress, like a fight or flight response. So in a stressful situation, what's going to happen is you've got an increase in heart rate, which gets more blood going to the muscles so that you can run away or fight. It increases blood pressure so that more blood flow goes to the tissues, again, so more oxygen is there so you can run away or fight. And it causes an increase in blood sugar levels to give the body the energy that it needs to run away or fight. And dilates the passageways of the lungs so that you can get more air in. This is why when someone is having like an anaphylactic response and their airway has constricted and they can't breathe, that you would give them epinephrine. And people will carry an EpiPen just so they can do that. So again, location of the adrenal cortex. Now, the pancreas. The pancreas is a mixed gland, and it has endocrine and exocrine functions. Basically, the exocrine functions, it produces substances that help the body digest food. But it has little islets within its structure, beta cells and alpha cells, which produce insulin and glucagon. And insulin will cause sugar in the bloodstream to go into cells. And glucagon, which allows glucose to enter the blood, is produced by alpha cells. So glucagon actually will impact the liver, which stores glucose in the form of glycogen and cause it to release sugar into the bloodstream. These hormones then are antagonistic to each other, and they maintain blood sugar homeostasis. The pineal gland is one of my favorite glands, mostly because I like to sleep. And the pineal gland produces something called melatonin, which helps with the body's sleep-wake cycle. It also seems to function in the female reproductive cycle. You know, the female reproductive cycle is 28 days. Something else that is on 28-day cycle are the phases of the moon. Pineal gland is activated by light, and as a result, a full moon cycle could result in also having your reproductive cycle along the same lines. Secretion of this is controlled by exposure to light. So during the summers when there's lots of light, we don't have as much melatonin. Light causes this gland to shut down. When it gets dark, we start producing melatonin, which gets us sleepy. So in the summertime, you may have lots of energy and not feel like you need to sleep. And then in winter months, you experience something, some people experience something called seasonal affective disorder, which just means that they're not really convenient. And since we work with 8-hour work days, and then we have 8-hour sleep cycles, which most people have, something that makes you drowsy outside of your normal cycle we would consider inconvenient. But I think of it as the body is telling us during wintertime, hey, it's cold out there, it's wet, why don't you just take a nap? Now, the thymus gland, it's located in the sternum, and it is involved in our immune system. It causes T cells to develop, some white blood cells develop in the thymus gland. So it's important in developing the immune system. It is largest in infants and children, but after your teenage years, it starts decreasing in size. From an evolutionary point of view, this sort of makes sense because when we were cavemen, or not even cavemen, just a few hundred years ago, we were living in small communities, and we'd probably see everybody that we were going to see, or be exposed to every disease that we were going to be exposed to in childhood. So the body doesn't waste energy on something it's not using. And as an adult, under those circumstances, we wouldn't use or need the thymus because we'd been exposed to everything. That does mean that the elderly are more susceptible to diseases because they don't have this thymus gland that is helping protect them. Now we talk about the gonads, and those are the ovaries and the testes. Now the ovaries produce eggs, and they produce a couple of hormones, the estrogens and progesterone. The testes produce sperm, and they produce androgens such as testosterone. And these estrogens, progesterone, and testosterone actually chemically look very much alike. They are very similar except for just a couple of minor changes, but the results are significant. Basically, the difference between being a man and a woman. So estrogens stimulate the development of secondary female sexual characteristics, like breasts, less body hair, and also matures female reproductive organs. With progesterone, estrogens also will promote breast development and regulate the menstrual cycle. Progesterone acts with estrogen to bring about the menstrual cycle. It helps in implantation of an embryo in the uterus, and it helps prepare the breasts for lactation. Testosterone is the big male hormone, and it's responsible for adult male secondary sex characteristics. So, body hair, more muscle mass. It's also involved in the reproductive system, and it is required for sperm cell production. There are other hormone producing tissues, and actually, depending on the situation, almost all of the tissues can produce some hormones. Like if tissues are damaged, they will release chemical compounds which will impact the adjacent tissues. So, other hormone producing tissues include parts of the small intestine, some of the stomach, the kidneys, the heart, many areas that have just little scattered glands. You don't need to know all of these. What I want you to know are the major glands. There are, in this list, actually just a couple that I am interested in. And the big one is, big ones are erythropoietin, which is made by the kidney, and it causes the production of red blood cells, and atrial natriuretic peptide, which is produced by the heart, which when the heart gets stretched, signals the kidneys to produce more urine. Now, the placenta also makes some hormones, and this is how we're able to test for pregnancy, as the hormones are produced only during pregnancy. The hormone is human chorionic gonadotropin, and so we can test for that to see if a woman is pregnant fairly early on in their pregnancy. Some of the developmental aspects of the endocrine system: most organs operate smoothly until you get old or older aged. So when the ovaries stop producing their hormones, you go through menopause because of lack of efficiency of the ovaries, and it results in a reduction of estrogen. Growth hormone production declines with age, which impacts our healing ability. As while I talked about growth hormone being important for growth and height and bone production, it also is important in stimulating tissues to replace themselves once damaged. And in most endocrine glands, any glandular tissue is going to decrease output with time. So that covers all of the conditions that I want you to know of associated with the endocrine system. Hopefully you find this helpful. And that's it for me.